not of the body. Just think, what is more beautiful than the sky full of stars? Describe any woman's body you choose, and still there is none so fair. Tell me about any eyes you like, yet none are so sparkling. When the stars were created, the very angels gazed in amazement, and we gaze with wonder now, but not with the same amazement as we did when we were children. This is what familiarity does. Things no longer strike us in their original intensity. How much more so in the case of a wife? And if by some chance disease comes too, then all is immediately lost. Look for affection, gentleness, and humility in a wife. These are the tokens of beauty. But let us not seek lovely physical features, nor reproach her for lacking things over which she has no control. No, let us not reproach her for anything, or be impatient and sullen. Haven't you seen how many men, living with beautiful wives, have ended their lives in misery, and how many who have lived with those of no great beauty have lived to extreme old age with great enjoyment? Let us wipe off the spot and smooth the wrinkle that is within, as it is written. Let us do away with the blemishes that are on the soul. Such is the beauty God requires. Let us make her fair in God's sight, not in our own. Let us not seek wealth or high social position. These are external things,
Right.
but true nobility of soul. Let no one marry a woman for her money. Such wealth is base and disgraceful. No, by no means let anyone aspire to get rich from his wife. Those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and hurtful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. Don't look for great wealth in your wife, and you will find that everything else will go well. Who, tell me, would overlook the most important things to pay attention to secondary matters? And yet, to our sorrow, that is how we behave in practically every case. Yes, if we have a son, we worry about finding him a rich wife, and not about how to develop in him a virtuous nature. We worry how he might acquire money, but not manners. If we engage in business, we don't think about how it might be free from sin, but how it might bring in the most profit. Money is everything now, and so everything has become corrupted and ruined, because we are possessed by this passion for money. Even so, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. What does this mean? He is using a much stronger image and illustration now, much closer and plainer, and much more demanding. Some might not be convinced by his previous illustration, saying, after all, he was Christ, and Christ is God. Naturally, he would sacrifice himself. Paul's method is different now. He says, husbands should love their wives, because such love is an obligation, not a favor, as their own bodies. Why? For no man ever hates his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it. That is, he takes particular care of it. How is she his flesh? Listen. This at last is bone of my bones, said Adam, and flesh of my flesh. And also they became one flesh. So he nourishes and cherishes his own flesh, as Christ does the church.
Hey, bro, you can send me a friend request, man. If anybody asks you, man, tell them God did it, man. Tell them God.
And that interrupts the momentum they were building. Good opportunity for the defense to escape this drive.
Hey, but you did your best, man. You can send me a friend request. I can get it.
As well here to speak of flesh and bones. For the Lord has exalted our material substance by partaking of it himself. Since therefore the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise partook of the same nature. It is obvious that he shares our nature. But how do we share his? How are we members of his flesh? We are truly members of Christ because through him we were created. And we are truly members of his flesh, because we are recreated by partaking of his mysteries. There are some who affirm that he came by water and blood, but will not accept that the Holy Spirit enables us to share his same essence through baptism. Foolish heretics! How can the children who confess his truth and are born again in the water not become his body? St. Paul explicitly states that we are members of his flesh and of his bones. Understand that Adam was fashioned from matter, and Christ was born in the same. From Adam's side came the bearer of corruption, but from Christ's side came life. Death blossomed in paradise, but was slain on the cross. The Son of God shares our nature, so we can share his. As he has us in him, so we have him in us. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. There is another aspect of marital obligation. Paul shows that a man leaves his parents, who gave him life, and is joined to his wife, and that one flesh, father, mother, and child, results from the commingling of the two. The child is born from the union of their seed, so the three are one flesh. Our relationship to Christ is the same. We become one flesh with him through communion, more truly one with him than our children are with us, because this has been his plan from the beginning. Don't make excuses for yourselves. Surely you realize that your body has many defects. One person is lame, another has deformed feet or hands, another is sick in one way or another, yet never is anyone so grief-stricken that he cuts off his afflicted member. Instead, he pays more attention to it than to the rest of his body, naturally, since it is part of him. A man should love his spouse as much as he loves himself, not merely because they share the same nature. No, the obligation is far greater, because they are no longer two bodies but one.
Here's the kicker,
He is the head,
ready to get
she
this
the
one
body.
started. And
Paul says
goes
elsewhere,
Tampa.
the head of Christ is
From the end
God.
zone, here's
And I
Devin
say that the
Tompkins.
husband and the wife are one body in the same way as Christ
And
and the
he'll be
Father
stopped
are one.
right around where he would have been.
Thus we
Gone
see
down
that
to
the
a
Father
knee,
is our
maybe
head
a yard
also.
shy of there at the 24.
Paul has combined two illustrations, the natural body and Christ's body. That is why he says, "This is a great mystery, and I take it to mean Christ and the church." What does this mean? The blessed Moses, or rather,
They
God,
start to drive with White.
surely reveals in Genesis that for two to
Across
become one flesh is a
midfield.
great and wonderful
And
mystery.
down to the
Now
29
Paul
yard
speaks
line.
of Christ as the
A
greater
huge
mystery.
play there right off
For he
the
left the
bat.
Father and came down
37
to us.
yards. Well, welcome to the party. First carry of the game. How about that?
And just think, as far as he's concerned, he's just getting warmed up.
Paul says, as if he were saying, nevertheless, the hour.
So now then, the big play has him all the way inside the 30 now, first and 10. Well, the Eagles going to signal for a timeout.
However, let
They'll
each
have
one
two
of them love
remaining
his
as we
wife
step
as
aside
himself.
here in this
Let
first
the
quarter.
wife see that she respects her husband. Indeed, of all actions, it is a mystery, a great mystery indeed, that a man should leave him who gave life to him and brought him up and her.
They go right back to Wade here on first down. And he tries to keep
For
the
a man
legs
to
churning,
leave
but he's going to be
those who
stopped
favored
behind
him
the line.
with so many great blessings, those with whom he has been in such close contact, and be united to
They
one
go play
whom he
action.
has not always
Mayfield
known,
rolling to
and
his
who
left.
often has nothing in
And he's going to have to
common
eat this one
which
as
is
down
honor
he
more than
goes.
all others.
Zach
That is
Cunningham
mystery
rolling in to
indeed.
get the sack.
Yet
That's
parents
a
are
heck of a
not
moment for your
distressed when
first sack
marriages
of the
take
game,
place,
because if this
but
long
when they
drive
don't,
ends without a touchdown
they are
because of that
delighted to
sack,
spend money
we're going to look
lavishly
back
away.
and say that might be one of the
Another
biggest
great mystery
plays of this
indeed.
Need
And one
something
that
from deep in the
contains
bag
some
of tricks
hidden
here
wisdom.
after first and
Moses
second down.
prophetically
Went
showed this
backwards.
to be
It's
so
third and
from the
very
very
long.
beginning, and Paul proclaims it now
Throwing.
when he compares
Mayfield.
it to Christ and the church. And this is said
This is
not for
caught
husband's sake
by
alone,
Evans.
however, but for
An
the wife as
incredible
well,
play there. They do get big
so that
yardage,
he
but
will
they're still
cherish it as
stopped a yard or
much
two
as
short.
Christ
And
does
it's
the
fourth
church,
down.
and that she will respect her husband. Paul is no longer enumerating the duties of love only, but of respect also. The wife is a second of the Lord,
Mayfield
but she
down.
should not demand equality. She is
Looking for
subject to
Evans,
the
and
head,
it's intercepted.
neither should the husband give
Picked
him
by
over
Kevin
subjection.
Byard. And the
For he is
Eagles
the
are going
body.
to get the ball back
If the
on
head
the
despises the
turnover
body,
as they
it
hold
will
on
itself
fourth
die.
down.
Rather, let the husband counterbalance her obedience with his love. Let the hands, the feet, and all the rest of the body's parts be dedicated to the service of the head. But let the head provide for the body, for the head is responsible for all the members. Nothing can be better than a union like this. But I know that some will say, how can there be love where there is fear? Most especially there, I say, she who fears also loves, and she who loves her husband respects him because he is her head. Also, she loves him because he is a part of her body, since the head is a member of the body as well. Paul places the head in authority in the body in obedience for the sake of peace. Where there is equal authority, there is never peace. A household cannot be a democracy ruled by everyone, but the authority must necessarily rest in one person. The same is true for the church. When men are led by the Spirit of Christ, then there is peace. There were 5,000 men in the Jerusalem church, and they were of one heart and soul, and no one said that any of the things which he possessed was his own, but they were subject to one another. This surely is an illustration of wisdom and godly fear. Notice, however, that Paul explains love in detail, comparing it to Christ's love for the church and her love for our own flesh, saying that for this reason a man leaves his father and mother, but he does not elaborate concerning fear. Why not? Why so?
A few misshapen ones in there.
He would much prefer love to prevail, because where there is love, everything else follows. But where love is absent, fear will be of no use. If a man loves his wife, he will bear with her even when she isn't very obedient. How difficult it is to have harmony when husband and wife are not bound together by the power of love. Fear is no substitute for this.
But you absolutely know
that is why he speaks at greater length about the stronger force. So if you think that the wife is the loser because she is told to fear her husband, remember that the principal duty of love is assigned to the husband, and you will see that it is her gain. And what if my wife refuses to obey me, the husband will ask? Never mind. Your obligation is to love her. Do your duty. Even when we don't receive our due from others, we must always do our duty. Here is an example. Paul begins this passage by saying, be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ. If your spouse doesn't obey God's law, you are not excused. A woman should respect her husband even when he shows her no love. And a husband should love his wife even when she shows respect. Then they will both be found to lack nothing, since each has fulfilled the commandment given to him. This, then, is what it means to marry in Christ. Spiritual marriage is like spiritual birth, which is not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh. Consider the birth of Isaac. Scripture says, it had ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Her marriage was not one of fleshly passion, but wholly spiritual, just as the souls joined to God in an ineffable union, which He alone knows. He who is united to the Lord becomes one spirit with Him. See how He does not despise physical unity, however, but uses spiritual unity to illustrate it. How foolish are those who belittle marriage. If marriage were something to be condemned, Paul would never call Christ a bridegroom and a church a bride, and then say this is an illustration of a man leaving his father and his mother, and again refer to Christ and the church. The psalmist prophesies of the church when he says, hear, O daughter, consider and incline your ear. Forget your people and your father's house, and the king will desire your beauty. And the gospel says concerning Christ, I came from the Father and have come into the world. When it says that Christ left before, don't imagine that there was a change of place, as there is with people. I came is not to be understood in terms of motion, but in reference to the incarnation. Why does Paul speak of the husband being joined to the wife, but not of the wife to the husband? Since he is describing the duties of love, he addresses the man. He speaks to the woman concerning respect, saying that the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. But to the husband he speaks of love, and obliges him to love, and tells him how he should love, thus binding and cementing him to his wife. If a man leaves his father for his wife's sake, and then abandons her for whose sake he left his father, what pardon can he deserve? Do you not see, husband, the great honor that God desires you to give your wife? He has taken you from your father and bound you to her. How can a believing husband say that he has no obligation if his spouse disobeys him? Paul is lenient only when an unbeliever wishes to separate. But if the unbelieving partner desires to separate, let it be so. In such a case, the brother or sister is not bound.
Here's Elliott on to kick it away.
And when you hear Paul say fear or respect, ask for the respect due you from a free woman, not the fear you demand from a slave. She is your body. If you do this, you dishonor yourself by dishonoring your own body. What does this respect entail? She should not stubbornly contradict you without rebelling against your authority as if she had the house. This is enough. If you desire greater respect, you must love as you are commanded.
Keeps it for a while, lets the defense relax a little bit, lets the offense regain
Love
confidence
itself
in their
will
game
accomplish
plan.
everything. The female sex is rather weak and needs a lot of support, a lot of condescension. I am not condemning those who are joining the second marriages. God forbid. The Apostle Paul himself commits them, though indeed he does so as a concession. Provide your wife with everything and endure troubles for her sake. You are obliged to do so. Here, Paul does not think it appropriate to illustrate his point with outside sources, as he does in so many other cases. The wisdom of Christ, so great and forceful, is sufficient, especially in the matter of the wife's subjection. A man shall leave his father and mother, he says, but he does not say he shall dwell with, but instead he shall cling to his wife, thus demonstrating the closeness of the union and the sincerity of the love. And Paul is not satisfied even with this, but goes further, explaining the subjection of the wife in the context of the two being no longer two. He does not say one spirit or one soul, union like this is possible for him, but he says one flesh. The wife is a secondary authority, but nevertheless she possesses real authority and equality of dignity, while the husband still retains the whole headship. The welfare of the household is thus maintained. Paul uses the example of Christ to show that we should not only love, but also govern, that she might be holy and without blemish. The word flesh and the phrase shall cling both refer to love.
Off the play fake.
And making her holy and without blemish refer to headship.
Looking for
both these
AJ Brown
things
again.
and
He's got
everything
it
else
again.
will follow.
And he goes
Seek
down,
the
but not
things
before
which
getting
please
this
God,
inside the
and
25.
those which please man will
Back-to-back
follow soon
receptions
enough.
for him, and it's another
Instruct
first
your
down.
wife, and your whole household will be in order and harmony.
Here's where it really pays
Listen
off.
to what Paul
Able to
says.
move, evade, and
If
is
there is
accurate
anything
throwing
they
on the
desire
run
to know,
and picking up a first
let them
down.
ask their husbands at home. If we regulate our households in this way, we will also be fit to oversee the church. For indeed the household is a little church. Therefore it is possible for us to surpass all others in virtue by becoming good
His
husbands
short
and
throw
wives.
caught by Goddard.
Consider Abraham and Sarah and Isaac,
Inside the
and the
15
318 men born in this
And the
house.
offense moving quickly to the
That
line.
household was united in harmony and piety, a perfect illustration
On
of the
first and
apostolic
10, it's
precept.
Hurts. Setting
Sarah
up the screen
respected
with
her husband.
Gainwell.
Listen to her words.
Touchdown,
It has not
Eagles.
yet happened to me, and I am old, and my Lord is old also.
13 yards out.
He loved her in return and also did what she asked. Their son was virtuous, and their servants were so loyal that they willingly risked their lives for their master. without asking why.
Let's find a way to score
The
right here
chief's
before the
servant
half,
was so
and that'll give
admirable
us momentum
that he
going
was
into the second
entrusted
half. Give us that cushion that
with
we're looking
arranging
for.
Isaac's
They got
marriage
that accomplished,
and had to
scoring
go
right
away
before the
on a
half
long
ended.
journey. As with a general whose troops are so well organized on the front that the enemy cannot find a place to penetrate for an attack, so it is with husband and wife. When the concerns of everyone in the house are the same, harmony reigns in the family. But if not, the entire household is easily broken up and destroyed. Let us therefore painstakingly care for our wives and children. By doing so, we are making our obligation of headship an easy task. Thus, we will have a good defense before Christ's judgment seat, and will be able to say, Behold, I and the children whom the Lord has given me are signs and portents in Israel. If the husband is admirable and the head sound, then the rest of the body will suffer no harm. Paul has precisely described for husband and wife what is fitting behavior for each. She should reverence him as the head, and he should love her as his body. But how is this behavior achieved? That it must be is clear now. Now I will tell you how. It will be achieved if we are detached from money, if we strive above everything for virtue, if we keep the fear of God before our eyes. What Paul says to servants in the next chapter applies to us as well. Knowing that whatever good anyone does, he will receive the same again from the Lord. Love her not so much for her own sake, but for Christ's sake. That is why he says, be subject as to the Lord. Do everything for the Lord's sake in a spirit of obedience to him. These words should be enough to convince us to avoid quarrels and disagreements. No husband should believe any accusations he hears from a third party about his wife and vice versa. Nor should a wife unreasonably monitor her husband's comings and goings, provided that he has always shown himself to be above suspicion. And what if you devote the day to your work and your friends, and the evening to your wife, but she is still not satisfied, but is jealous for more of your time? Don't be annoyed by her complaints. She loves you. She is not behaving absurdly. Her complaints come from her fervent affection for you, and from fear. Yes, she is afraid that her marriage bed will be stolen, that someone will deprive her of her greatest blessing, that someone will take from her him who is her head. When you are tempted to jealousy, think again of Abraham and Sarah's household. While Sarah was still barren, she herself asked Abraham to take her maid Hagar as a concubine. It was her idea alone. Abraham had not so much as suggested it, though they were childless in their old age. He chose to be a father rather than to grieve his wife. Yet after all this, what did Sarah say to him once Hagar had conceived? May the wrong done to me be on you. May the Lord judge between you and me. Now if he had anyone else, would he not have been moved to anger? Would he not have said to her, what do you mean? I had no desire to have anything to do with the woman. It was all your doing. And are you now blaming me? No, he said nothing of the sort, but only, behold, your maid is in your power. Do to her as you please. He gave up the woman who had shared his bed, who had therefore become one flesh with him, so as not to grieve Sarah. Surely, he must have valued his wife above everything. More than this, Hagar was bearing his child. What man would not pity a woman who had just conceived his own son? But righteous Abraham was unmoved, and put nothing before the love he owed his wife. Let us imitate his patience. A wife should never nag her husband. You lazy coward. You have no ambition. Look at our relatives and neighbors. They have plenty of money. Their wives have far more than I do. Let no wife say any such thing. She is her husband's body, and it is not for her to dictate to her head, but to submit and obey. But why should she endure poverty, some will ask? If she is poor, let her console herself by thinking of those who are much poorer still. If she really loved her husband, she would never speak to him like that, but would value having him close to her more than all the gold in the world. Likewise, if a husband has a wife who behaves this way, he must never exercise his authority by insulting and abusing her. Instead, he should show true nobility of spirit and patiently remind her that in the wisdom of heaven, poverty is no evil. Then she will stop complaining. But he must not teach her only by words, but by deeds. He should teach her to be detached from high social position. If he is so himself, she will imitate him. Beginning on their wedding night, let him be an example of gentleness, temperance, and self-control, and she will be likewise. He should advise her not to decorate herself with golden earrings, necklaces, or other jewelry, or to accumulate expensive clothes. Instead, her appearance should be dignified. Dignity is never served by theatrical excess. Furnish her house neatly and soberly. If the bridegroom shows his wife that he takes no pleasure in worldly excess, and will not stand for it, their marriage will remain free from the evil influences that are so popular these days. Let them shun the immodest music and dancing that are currently so fashionable. I am aware that many people think me ridiculous for giving such advice, but if you listen to me, you will understand the advantages of a sober lifestyle more and more as time goes on. You will no longer laugh at me, but will laugh instead at the way people live now like silly children or drunken men. What is our duty then? Remove from your lives shameful, immodest, and satanic music, and don't associate with people who enjoy such profligate entertainment. When your bride sees your manner of life, she will say to herself, "Wonderful, what a wise man my husband is. He regards this passing life as nothing. He has married me to be a good mother for his children and a prudent manager of his household." Will this sort of life be distasteful for a young bride? Only perhaps for the shortest time, and soon she will discover how delightful it is to live this way. She will retain her modesty if you retain yours. Don't engage in idle conversations. It never profits anyone to talk too much. Whenever you give your wife advice, always begin by telling her how much you love her. Nothing will persuade her so well to admit the wisdom of your words as her assurance that you are speaking to her with sincere affection. Tell her that you are convinced that money is not important, that only thieves thirst for it constantly, that you love her more than gold. And indeed, an intelligent, discreet, and pious young woman is worth more than all the money in the world. Tell her that you love her more than your own life, because this present life is nothing, and that your only hope is that the two of you pass through this life in such a way that in the world to come you will be united in perfect love. Say to her, "Our time here is brief and fleeting. But if we are pleasing to God, we can exchange this life for the kingdom to come. Then we will be perfectly one, both with Christ and each other, and our pleasure will know no bounds. I value your love above all things, and nothing will be so bitter or painful to me as our being at odds with each other. Even if I lose everything, any affliction is tolerable if you will be true to me. Show her that you value her company and prefer being at home to being out. Esteem her in the presence of your friends and children. Praise and show admiration for her good acts. If she ever does anything foolish, advise her patiently. Pray together at home and go to church. When you come back home, let each ask the other the meaning of the readings and prayers. If you are overtaken by poverty, remember Peter and Paul, who were more honored than kings or rich men, when they spent their lives in hunger and thirst.
So from second and long,
Remind
now
one
we go to
another that
third
nothing
and
in in
very
life is to be
manageable.
feared,
Yeah, they love
except
that
offending
phrase,
God.
don't they? Because as an offensive coordinator,
If your
you
marriage
can
is
keep
like
people
this,
a little bit off balance
perfection will
and
rival the
guessing
holiest of
because you
most.
don't have to throw it. You can come back with a
If
strong
you are
run game.
inclined
And
to
his pass
entertain
is
Indian dinner
intercepted for the
parties,
4th time
there should be
today.
nothing immodest
Picked off
or
by James
excessive about them.
Bradbury. And he's able
And
to
if
get
you
it
should
back
find
to the
some poor, saving
33-yard
man just by
line.
stepping into your house and
Things
bring
just
God's
kind of
blessing
continue.
upon you, invite him. Now I'll add one more thing. None of you should look for a rich woman to marry, but a poor one instead. You'll get no satisfaction from her money, since if she is rich, she will annoy you with her taunts and demands. She'll be disrespectful and extravagant and will frustrate you by saying things like, "Don't complain about all my clothes. I haven't spent anything of yours."